So there were about 3 days where something just happened to life, as I knew it anyway. And I was on the phone a lot, and I was talking to business associates and colleagues and peers and friends, and everybody was shell-shocked because there was a pandemic, and it was confusing, and nobody knew what to do, and we were supposed to close our businesses and not be able to make money so that we didn't die. And everybody was upset and in a frenzy, and really they were very, very heavy days. And I don't know where it came from. I honestly don't. I don't know where the insight or the inspiration came from, but something compelled me to pull together a group. And instead of listening one at a time to everybody's challenges and difficulties, what if we all came together and instead of focusing on the challenges and difficulties, which were real, what if we focused on the thing that drove us all to do what we do? The heart that came with altruism. The desire that all of us had at some point in our lives that we got in touch with, it kind of became a mantra of, I want to help people. And whether it was through science or medicine or fitness, it's exactly the path we pursued. And along that path, we made mistakes, and we pursued business, and we had to pay rent, and we had payroll, and we got very caught up in a lot of things. And to be honest, maybe at some level we lost the purity of the mission. We never forgot it, but we got caught up. And by the third day of that heaviness, the inspiration became a thing. And honestly, I don't even know where the 55 number came from. It just showed up. And I looked at a calendar and I counted and I said 55 days from whatever that start date was will be June 1st. It'll be summer. And something's got to give by then. And we should be back to some kind of normal. So let's just give of ourselves and let's help people. And here we are 49 days later, and I have to tell you, it has been an incredible ride. And I appreciate every one of you, those of you who are coaches, and those of you who are participants, and those of you who are brand new. It's honestly been something truly incredible. So when I'm looking at this chart, I remember, day one, or before we started, we had the kickoff, and I was showing you this, and I said, well, here's the plan. This is what we're going to do. And now we're in the last week, like I'm out of chart. So we're going to finish this off, and then we're going to go somewhere else. And I don't know where, but somewhere great. But for now, we're going to finish off these 55 days, and wherever you're at, you're going to finish it better than you are right now. Does that sound good? So I'm going to share some stuff, but I'm also going to tell you that you don't need tonight's webinar. Then we're going to have another webinar next week, and you only need that one if you want to win stuff. So this one you don't need, and that one you don't need. The truth is you have the power. You have an understanding of thoughts and actions and outcomes, and you have the plan. And although I'm going to share some options today for progression, there's no need to progress. Now, I made a list, and there are 14 people, and not only 14, but there are 14 people that I know because you reach out to me in some way every week, and you want to do more, and you want it to get harder, and you're thoroughbreds. So with you in mind, I structured something that's going to make it even harder. But I'm saying it to you in that way because I don't want the rest of the people to think that they have to kick it up. So honestly, the routine that you started last week is sufficient for most of you. I would even say it is sufficient for all of you except for the maniacal thoroughbreds that always think they need to do more. So for you guys, I'm giving you more. But I want to preface it by saying for everyone else, you don't need to do it. Got it? Good. So when we look at this slide, we see a meal, we see a checkbook, and we see a woman holding on to her foot. What would you say is the theme here? Meal, checkbook, foot. Doesn't seem to be much correlation. Well, let's see. You eat the meal with your hands, and you write the check with your hands, and you hold on to the foot with your hands. Could it have something to do with your hands? No. What could the theme be? Does anybody know? What do we do with our bank account? Why do we write notes in the chat? Heather, wait a minute. I believe in your life you've had two last names. Am I correct? I'm looking at your name, but I'm also just sort of realizing didn't you have a last name that was Balance at one time? Okay, so it makes sense that you would guess it, right? So yes, the theme is balance, and that's what we're going to talk about today, this concept of balance. And early in the program, if you started with a routine where you progressed and you went from a mountain pose to a tree pose, we made it more challenging by asking you to incorporate balance. We took some of the movements and we challenged your body a little bit more by asking you to incorporate balance. So we're going to talk about balance, but with that word, there are two other words that I'm going to use, and Ariel likes the word center. And we're all going to come to understand this word spectrum. So balance, spectrum, and center become the themes of tonight. One of the things that we've been doing at Biohackers is taking people's temperature. Thankfully, we don't have to do it the old-fashioned way. We have these very cool Star Trek-like devices where we just put it near your forehead and it tells us how many degrees you are. And although there is a little variance, sometimes somebody is like 97.8 or 98.8, it's kind of amazing that almost everybody is at 98.6. I mean, you'd think that there are times when, in Florida here, you're in your car and you got the air conditioner, so it's cold, and then you get out and it's hot, and you'd think that your body temperature would change. Like, doesn't it make sense that you would come in from the heat and they would take your temperature and they go, oh, you're 101. You go, no, I just came in from the heat. Wait, let me just relax for a minute, and then they check it again. But we're always at 98.6. Now, when we are fighting off something, we do get a fever. And that's an immune response. That's your body's way of saying, okay, there's an invader here, let's cook it. Seriously. I'm going to heat up so we can kill this thing. And then once the thing is killed, we're going to go back to 98.6. It really is fascinating that we can just stay at 98.6 degrees. Is there any magic in that number? Well, it is representative of this state of homeostasis. And homeostasis is really important. Because if you remember early on, I was talking about disruptions and maladaptations and why we move away from health and why we move toward disease. And I told you that we need to balance adrenal stress and recovery. And when we are in a state of recovery, our body heals and rebuilds and regenerates. And it does that in this state of what is called homeostasis, where everything is back in balance. So if you've been living your life in adrenal stress for any period of time, if you're constantly worried and anxious and hurried and mad and angry and agitated, then you have probably not been in homeostasis in a very long time. Some of you filled out the survey form today, and I appreciate it. All of you should, because there are going to be prizes and giveaways. But some of you did. I posted it this morning just so I can get a sense of how it worked, and thankfully it worked really well. And I was really pleasantly thrilled to read some of your responses, and whether it was I lost 10 pounds or I'm eating better, I have more energy, there was something really nice about this period of time where you were not living the adrenal stress life. At first we started very stressed, but somehow I think many people, especially through this program, found a way to relax into it. I think, Heather, I so appreciate you coaching people through this journaling process because, honestly, so many people were so caught up in their own lives they didn't have any time to plan it or reflect on it. And suddenly they had time. They needed to have an adjustment, so they realized the importance of it. But when we learn to just chill, we turn down the heat. When we learn to reduce cortisol, we come back to this place of balance, and that's where our body starts to recover and heal. So 98.6 is the temperature that our body manages to return to. And the amazing thing is, in this homeostasis state, we balance hormones, we balance neurotransmitters, we balance blood sugar, we balance the breakdown of tissue and the building of tissue. It is incredible how many things your body is capable of maintaining balance of at the same time. You sweat, you lose water, you get thirst, you drink, you get back into balance. So when you get hot, without you having to think about it, things go on in your body beneath the conscious level to bring you back to 98.6. So if you are sweating, exerting yourself, if you're going for a run outside, or if it's very, very hot wherever you are, then your blood vessels dilate. Your sweat glands begin to release water, and heat is transferred outward. So you cool down. When you're in the cold, anybody who's done cryotherapy, you guys know, in the third minute, you start to shiver. Now, that's a protective mechanism. Some very cool things are happening because you're in a controlled environment, you're doing it on purpose. But if you're actually out in the freezing cold, this is protective, this is life-preserving. So your blood vessels actually constrict, and you start to shiver, and when you shiver, your muscles are generating heat. So ultimately, your body has this amazing way of bringing you back to this place of balance. Honestly, human beings have no business walking on two legs. I'm not kidding. Biomechanically, it doesn't really make any sense. Like if you take a baby and you say this thing is going to stand on two legs, no, I mean the head is so heavy and the surface of the feet is so small relative to holding up that heavy head on top of this very long spine. But somehow, we all find a way to stand up. I think the hardest I ever laughed, and I've laughed very hard in my life, but I think the hardest I ever laughed was the day that my daughter started to walk. I remember it so vividly because she'd try, she'd hold on to something, and it was like this moment where she took a step, and she looked wide-eyed like, oh my God, I can do this. And then she looked like she was going to fall, but she didn't. She was just wobbling and started to run and run and run nonstop. So innately, we find this incredible way to balance. So we balance our temperature, we balance our hydration, we balance our bodies. And then we decide that we're going to play sports or participate in something. Or you're a kid and you go, oh, here's a piece of wood or something I could try to walk on to balance, or a pole or a slack line. I'm going to try to walk on it. And we're intentionally creating this unstable imbalance so that we can play the game of trying to find balance. And that's amazing because that's how our bodies learn. If you've ever gone deep sea fishing and the seas were a little bit rough, I'm not talking about storm, I'm just talking about a little bit rough. If you went out with seasoned fishermen, they just stand there. Like, how do they do that? And you're doing like this crazy tap dance and you're feeling like you're going to throw up. The reason is they're used to it. If you've ever seen somebody ride a unicycle, they spent a lot of practice trying to get to the point that they could balance on one wheel. If you've ever seen a tightrope walker, they make it look relatively easy. The crazy Walendas walk across buildings on a tightrope. It seems insane, but they're so practiced that they have developed what we call kinesthetic awareness. When I do a workshop, I'll have somebody come up to the front, and I ask them to just stand on one leg. And it takes maybe 30 seconds for most of the people to just get their balance. Like at first, they'll get a little wobbly, and then they've got it. And then I say, now I want you to put one arm out to the side, and they do. And I say, I'm going to push down on your arm, and I want you to stand and not fall to the side. And they do. And the reason that they don't fall is because they have the kinesthetic awareness. Consciously in the moment and subconsciously, there's a neuromuscular connection. So they're inwardly preparing their body so it contracts the right muscles to keep them from falling. And then I'll say, close your eyes. And as soon as they close their eyes, they get all wobbly. Why? Because they were relying on their eyesight to give them the kinesthetic awareness. So they take away that sense. And now they have to get all kinesthetically aware again. And about a minute later, they are. And then I say, remember when I pushed your arm down and you stood upright? And they'll say, yeah. And they'll prepare, and I'll just tap them on the other shoulder and they fall. Now, I don't let them fall to the ground. So when your body has this innate awareness of what's going on around you, it learns to balance. So if you try surfing for the first time, you're going to spend a lot of time in the water, but you get better. And then you say, you know what? This is nothing. These are like 2-foot waves. I want to go to California. And then you go to California, and you ride some bigger waves, and you go, this is nothing. I want to go to Australia, and I want to ride the pipeline. Because we're always looking for more and more challenge so that we could balance at a higher level. So we use this in exercise. Now, athletes are very familiar with balance training. Now, what if you're not an athlete? Why would you do this? Well, Holly will tell you, keeps you young. When we deal with her active agers, seniors, especially if they haven't been active or played any kind of sports or done anything recreational in a lot of years, form follows function, and the body starts to develop a different kind of form. And they're not as agile as they used to be, and they develop forward head. And they have a little more trouble standing up, and they start to lose their balance. And that's why when people get to be in their 70s and 80s, we worry about them falling and breaking a hip. Is this preventable? Yeah. But we've got to do balance training. So we get better when we challenge our body more. So if you want to take an exercise routine and you want to make it more challenging, well, conventionally what people do is they do more volume, more exercise, more weight, more repetitions, greater distance. But something else we could do that's incredibly effective is move them onto an unstable surface. So we've used a stability ball. Now you understand why. There are times you've done movements on one leg. Now you understand why. Because when you take a movement that you're used to and we want to make it more challenging, by asking you to reduce the stability, you require more muscular cooperation. And you seek a higher level of kinesthetic awareness. And when you see somebody who has amazing balance skills, it looks effortless. But the truth is there is a tremendous amount of work going on. The muscles have just learned to fire. Agonists fire, and then the antagonists fire, and stabilizers fire. And the muscles are all contracting. There's a tremendous amount of muscular work going on. But it looks easy because it looks like there's not a whole lot of movement. Because the body appears to be still. And that is an incredible symphony of muscular movement. Stillness in human form, when the body is asked to balance, is a symphony of movement. So we can take a routine and we can challenge you more by asking you to balance. Holly says good balance is also good for your cognitive abilities, and she's absolutely 1,000% right, because you're stimulating neural development, neuroplasticity. The brain is forming new pathways. So some of these things appear simplistic, but man, are they valuable. So if we take a movement like a one-arm row, you could do this where you're supported. So you're really focused on pulling that weight up against gravity. And to make sure you don't topple over, you support yourself on a chair or on a table or on a bench. Now, if we wanted to make that movement more challenging, we can, of course, increase the weight. We can increase the distance the weight travels, or we could move to a stability ball. Why? Well, because it's less stable. There's something there, so you're not likely to fall, but you need to balance. So same movement all of a sudden becomes a little more challenging because the surface became less stable. Is that making sense? If we want to make it more challenging than that, we can go into a pose that we know as an anterior reach. Now you're standing on one leg. Once you stop wobbling, you could row with two arms, and you'll very quickly adapt, but more muscular contraction is going on. If we want to make that more challenging, now you do that anterior reach, but you only move the weight on one side, so we have an uneven distribution of your center of gravity. So by doing this, we can take a simple exercise and make it more and more challenging over time. I said earlier, you don't have to change anything. You could stay with the same routine this week. It's a good routine. Did you guys like it? I gave you a choice of two. I said choose a path. I'm going to guess most of you will stay the path you're on. Now, if you chose one path to stay the course routine, and you're saying, oh man, I handle that like a champ, I'm really ready to kick it up, then you can certainly go to the Up Your Game routine. But there's a big difference between the two. I know that Holden told me this was his favorite routine ever of all time because he likes working with thoroughbreds. And if you've watched Holden's shows, you've seen he's creative. He likes to take these movements and increase the challenge. And a lot of it is done by changing center of gravity and changing balance. So the Up Your Game routine is really challenging. Stay the Course routine is appropriately challenging. So if we go to the Stay the Course routine, as you did it last week, here it is. You can change out the movements, but you're still basically doing the same thing. The 3 bio movements, squat, a push, and a pull. And Holly did a really nice job of giving you so many different options that you can do. But now, if you want to stay with that, but increase the challenge a bit, you'll stay with a squat and a push and a pull. You'll just find ways to do it on an unstable surface. So I'm going to leave that to Holly to give you more options this week. But here are just a few. The exercises with the stars just change the stability a bit. So if we look at what we call the pistol squat, it's a lot more challenging than having both feet on the ground. And then if we move it onto a Bosu, then it gets really challenging. So you could see how just by varying the position, we can increase the challenge without necessarily going to a whole lot of weight or even going to a whole lot of volume. I think I said there's no need to progress. And if you're getting the feeling that it's important because I keep saying it, then maybe it is. So if anybody here has fear of pistol squats, then you have two options. You can not do them because you don't have to, or you can stare fear in its mean little nasty face, and you can say, fear, I'm going to defeat you. And then you activate your prefrontal cortex, but you do it with a really good spotter. So these are your choices, and that's why I said you can choose a path. But there's no need to progress. Okay, now I'm going to talk to the thoroughbreds. So everyone else can listen. You guys can certainly listen. But I don't want you to feel that you're being pushed to do something advanced. But there is an advanced principle that I use with athletes, and in terms of improving performance, it improves performance really quickly if you adjust it sports specifically. Before I get into what I mean by that, let's understand that if an exercise routine is going to just focus on building muscle, it actually may hinder performance in the real world. And I've seen that a lot. I've seen people who they're so focused on getting stronger or building muscle that they wind up damaging connective tissue. And life is actually harder. So it doesn't just happen automatically that you exercise and life gets easier. In order for an exercise routine to enhance our daily lives or complement it, we have to structure the routine so that the way we're exercising muscles translates to what we do in the real world. So for any movement pattern that's called upon in real life or in an athletic performance, we can break it down to 3 different exercises that together would play into that movement pattern. So I've created a concept that I call clusters, and conventionally this is what I will use with athletes. So it's a tricep. But rather than us focusing on a very specific muscle or muscle group, we're focusing on a movement pattern. When I talk about the functional 6, and I say this replicates real-world movement, people sometimes go, well, I'm never squatting and pressing a ball over my head. Well, it's not the ball, and it's not even the squatting and pressing. It's the biomechanics of movement. So when a mom comes home with this little infant, the infant doesn't weigh that much. And then over time, the infant gets heavier. Anybody who's a mom will be able to relate to this. And the position of bending into a crib to lift a tiny little thing is kind of easy. But when you're bending into a crib to lift what's the equivalent of a heavier medicine ball than the one you were lifting last month, well, biomechanically, you're facing some challenge. So we do something like the squat, curl, press so that we learn to move a load, a weight, through space using all of the same muscles that we would use replicating the real-world movement with the exercise. Somebody who's playing college basketball would require different muscular interplay than a mom who's taking a baby out of a crib. So with any specific life patterns or sports patterns, we can break it down to these movements. You're either pushing from the shoulder joint, or you're pushing from the hip joint, or you're lifting something from the ankles up to the shoulders, or you're pulling from the torso, or you're pulling down from overhead, or you're extending the hips involving the low back and hip complex. So you don't have to understand all of this. I just want to explain why this routine gets really intense for the thoroughbred. Anyone who's not a thoroughbred, it can sound like Charlie Brown's teacher right now if you want. Just hear me going, wah, 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 wah. And if you're interested, then you could certainly listen. So I'm not going to go through all of the different movement patterns. I'm just going to give you an example. So if somebody is using a push from the shoulder joint, we would take 3 specific movements and put them together, and you would do a certain number of repetitions. Now you'll notice the number of repetitions changes, and in a moment you'll understand why. Okay, so I have different movement pattern combinations for different sports-specific movements. That said, I just wanted to explain it. The thoroughbred is very often interested in increasing muscle size and muscle strength. Not exclusively, but that's typically an interest. And in order to do this optimally, you want to understand the different muscle fiber types. So we have what is called the fast twitch muscle fiber. That means if you jump under a heavy weight, if you're going to do squats and you put a heavy weight on your back, these are the muscles that come to act quickly. They're fast twitch. They're ready. These are also the muscles that are most prone to hypertrophy, the most prone to grow. So if you're looking at a power lifter who's got no neck because he's got massive traps and massive shoulders, you're pretty much looking at a preponderance of that fast twitch muscle fiber. It's the type of fiber that is most prone to grow. If you look at a marathon runner, we can argue who is more of the athlete, and powerlifters will argue to the death. They'll even threaten the marathon runner, going, I'm the athlete, and I'm going to kick your ass, but they can't because they can't catch him. So maybe the marathon runner, but the marathon runner doesn't have a preponderance of that fast twitch muscle fiber. So here we go with this word spectrum. There is a spectrum of muscle fiber types. Just as there is a spectrum of conditions where your body's going to heat up and get cold and you're meeting right back at 98.6, there's a spectrum of muscle fiber. There's a spectrum, a blood sugar elevation, a blood sugar drop, and in homeostasis, you come right back to the middle. So strength and growth uses a heavy weight, and that calls predominantly upon fast twitch muscle fiber. If you want to grow that type of muscle fiber, you'll choose a heavy weight where you can only get 4 to 6 repetitions. So when you see the high school athletes in the gym, how much can you bench, man? They're using heavy weight and they're starting to put on size. So typically when guys start lifting weights at about 17 or 18, they start to put on size quickly because they're really targeting that fast twitch muscle fiber. If you look at somebody who's more of a performance athlete, but they do some all-out efforts, then they're going to call more upon the endurance muscle fiber. And if we talk about somebody who is in fact a marathon runner, then we're all the way on the other end of the spectrum using the very slow twitch oxidative muscle fiber. Now, it's not that one's better than the other. It's that if we really want to be elite, we want to train all of it. So you could see even through this 55 days, we staggered things a bit. And everybody was training different muscle fiber types, which is great. Everybody's getting better. But let's understand, the fast twitch muscle fiber is one extreme that deals with heavy weight. And the slower twitch fiber is the other extreme, which is more oxidative muscle fiber, requires oxygen. It can go for longer periods of time, but it doesn't grow large the way fast twitch fiber does. So what we want is, here's that word again, balanced muscle. We want functional muscle. Now, if somebody in the group says, I want to be a power lifter, or I want to be a sumo wrestler, or I just want to be massive, then you could take these principles and modify them. But I don't think that's the majority of people in this group. Am I right? So I think the idea of finding balanced muscle, even for the thoroughbreds in the group, is really appealing. So you'll certainly put on strength, but you'll also be agile. And you'll be athletic, and you'll be fit, and you'll be able to do all of the things that you are asked to do in life. So when we look at the more advanced program, the Up Your Game routine, there are ways that we can make it more challenging. So this is for the thoroughbred. Now you'll see I included options for the Phoenix and Chrysalis because if you feel you want to progress, you can, but I'm asking you to really gauge this carefully. So the thoroughbred can increase the challenge this week, knowing that it's the last week of the 55-day routine, by increasing the exercise volume, a little, but over time it's a lot. By implementing clusters. Now, I've strategically built them in. I'm not going to break down every movement of every routine, but I think based on what I explained, you'll see it built in. We're going to vary the rep ranges so that you're working some fast twitch and some slow twitch and some middle range. And we're also going to add power moves, which are predominantly going to target more of the fast twitch muscle fibers. So, this was the routine last week. As you guys know, it's an intense routine. As Holden will tell you, it's a fun routine. So for people who can handle it, yeah, it's a fun routine. And for people who enjoy challenging themselves, yes, it's a fun, challenging routine. But it's not for everyone. Now, if you want to kick it up, here's what we'll do. We'll rearrange some of the trisets to add in clusters. We can vary the rep ranges. We will change your kinesthetic awareness challenge a bit, and we'll add in power moves. Okay, so I'm going to spend just about another 5 minutes on it, but I want you to look at what it says here. These are options for high-level athletes and mostly crazy people. Now, I don't say that to offend you. I don't. If you're a super athlete and you enjoy training this way or it brings you reward, great. But if you just want more and faster and better and leaner, that's okay. Let's just acknowledge that we're a little crazy, okay? It's not a bad crazy. There are other kinds of crazy that are a lot worse. But I'm pointing this out because I don't want people who are just jumping into this webinar thinking that this is the routine they have to do. You've got to be a little crazy to take on this challenge. Good? Okay. So we're going to add in the power moves. You see them on the right. They're basic compound movements that require a lot of large muscle. These will all be familiar to every thoroughbred. So the way the routine works is you'll do the tricep, and if you're going to do 2 trisets, you'll do 2 trisets, and if you're going to do 3, you'll do 3, and then you'll finish once with the power move. But you're going to choose a weight that will only allow you 4 to 6 repetitions. This is where it gets into that fast twitch fiber. Now, the nice thing is you don't have to go super heavy because your muscles are already fatigued. But by challenging yourself with a heavy workload, you're hitting that fast twitch muscle fiber quickly and efficiently, and there's no need to do a whole lot. So that little bit of just adding that one set on each line makes a huge difference in terms of workload. I also said we're going to vary the rep ranges. So you'll see that it's 20, 8, 12. So when you do the tricep, the side lunge would be 20 reps. The sumo pull would be 8 reps. And the forward or walking lunges would be 12 reps. Why are we varying it? Because we're working through the spectrum, the entire spectrum of muscle fibers. Then we have a pre-exhaust set, which is 20 for the first exercise, 12 for the second. And then the power move will choose a weight that will allow us 4 to 6. If you're listening to this saying, what is he talking about? Then you're probably not a thoroughbred that's ready for this routine. So stay with me. I'm going to get back into the real world in just a moment. Finally, we're adding in some movements that ask you to use more kinesthetic awareness. So, for example, when you're working the biceps, doing a barbell curl, an alternate dumbbell curl, reverse curl, you're going to do them on an unstable surface like a Bosu or an upside-down Bosu. So you could, however you'd like to be creative, changing the kinesthetic awareness demand, do it. So here is the super advanced routine for athletes and crazy people for the remainder of the program. Okay? Good. Now let's come back to center. See, I was out of balance because I was talking only to the super advanced thoroughbreds. But I have to say that's a part of the beauty of this program. And as I told you, not a whole lot of thought went into this. It just came together. I mean, the coaches have been amazing. But it's nice that some people, like the more advanced thoroughbreds, will relate more to Kristen and Holden doing these routines. And the people who'd normally be intimidated by those workouts can go to Holly and she makes them feel like, oh, I see, I can do this. So now we're back in center. For a couple of minutes, I was all the way over there talking to those people who are thoroughbreds. Now we're back in center. And center is where we want to be in so many different ways. So it's going to be a theme for the week. You're going to hear the coaches talking about being centered. The whole spectrum of muscle fiber. Remember, in order for this to really help you, you want to be balanced. You want to work some fast twitch, you want to work some slow twitch, but ultimately, you're going to find the best outcome by coming back to center. There are times you're going to be in adrenal stress because the workload is high, because the exercise routine is high, because you're under stress, but you're going to improve the most when you come back to center. So center, homeostasis, balance, they're all the same thing. When we talk about a spectrum, I just shared with you the spectrum of muscle types. Ariel this week is going to move up to the crown. I'm going to let her do what she does so well rather than me trying to step on it. But in Kabbalah or Jewish mysticism, the highest level of heaven or the highest level of God is called the Ein Sof. That's Hebrew. And it really translates to mean the no thing. Yet the principles of Kabbalistic mysticism are built upon this idea that God is all, that God is everything. So how could it be the no thing and be everything? Well, when you're centered, you can connect. So I'm going to leave that to Ariel to talk about the Crown Chakra because it is kind of your access point. When we do the moving light meditation, we begin with light entering your space through the crown. And she took you through the chakras beginning at the root and moving up. There is I'll call it a program. There's a device that I use. Many of the coaches use it. It is a quantum energy reader. It reads the vibration in your voice. It reads your energy field visually. I know this may sound a little bit crazy, but quite simply, it reads your energy and it can tell you a lot of things about yourself in a given moment. And one of the things that we can really look at from using this quantum infinity program is whether your chakras are balanced. So as you've learned them and you've come to understand the colors, now we can take it to a completely different level. And there are times you're going to be more in one than another, but ideally, everything comes into balance. That's where we heal. Sound healing, light healing. These are really based on something, a term that we hear in quantum energy, frequency. You might have heard of the Schumann resonance, the heartbeat of the earth. There is a vibrational frequency. When we can align our bodies with an external source of a healthy frequency, we can improve our health. Now, this will all come to you throughout the week. But I want to tell you that frequency is delivered in light, and frequency is delivered in sound. I have met some amazing sound healers. And it's not just listening to music, but I want to tell you, when I said music is incredibly healing, if you listen to the right kind of music, or I'll say the right kind of music for you, I mean it. It is incredibly healing. I had the privilege of meeting Masaru Emoto. And if you've heard that name, he did the water experiments, and he assessed how frequency can change the crystallization of water, the literal makeup of the water. Look it up online, Masaru Emoto. His actual published experiments began where he took 2 classes of children. I think they were 4th graders. And he had 2 different jars of water. And one class every morning would go up to the jar of water and say, "I love you," and express love. And the other class would go to the other jar of water and say, "You're a fool." And when they watered plants with the water, the "I love you" water grew beautiful plants, and the other water led to plants ultimately dying. He then figured out that if he could freeze the water and look at the crystallization of it, he would see patterns. And when he exposed water to heavy metal music, the patterns were chaotic. When he exposed the water to Baroque music or classical music or John Lennon's Imagine, the crystals were beautiful. Now, why am I sharing this with you? Because you are predominantly water. Your body is mostly water. So if vibration, frequency can affect water in a jar, imagine what it can do to you. But we've got to find the right frequencies. We've got to be in center. We've got to be in balance. We have to be in homeostasis. All of the people that I meet with chronic disease and weight loss resistance, all of them have a hormonal imbalance. All of them. Oh, my doctor said I have diabetes. You know what diabetes is? It's a hormonal imbalance. It's an imbalance between pancreatic hormones. I have a thyroid issue. You know what that is? It's a hormonal imbalance. Your thyroid output is not sufficient because your adrenal output is too high. So all of this comes down to the same thing. Our bodies innately need to be in balance to maintain health. When people get a prescription for Lexapro or Prozac, they're getting what's called an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter. They're keeping serotonin circulating longer to make them feel better. Why do they feel bad? Because they have a neurotransmitter imbalance. If we can bring everything back into balance, guess what we have? A perfect state of health. So what brings us into balance? Everything we're doing. I told you at the beginning, we're going to work on brain, immune system, gut, mind, spirit, and cell. That's how we bring everything back in balance, by gaining control of those 6 points. Brain, immune system, gut, mind, spirit, and cell. Those are the key touch points to restore balance in all of the areas I just spoke about. And what we put into our bodies is vitally important. So we've been going through this strategy that I've developed called Circadian Nutrition. And it is effective at restoring balance, at correcting maladaptations, especially when put together with proper exercise and hydration and sleep and mindset. So most of you, I'm sure, have adapted to the intermittent fast or the intermittent eating. Some of you are still at times hungry, And I would say eat more. I know you have a fear of that, but if you're hungry and you're doing the intermittent fast, I guarantee this, you didn't put on fat. There's no way you put on fat if you're hungry. Your metabolism is speeding up. Your appetite is simply saying, I need more fuel. But you don't have to eat more often. We'll get to that point because we're going to go back to metabolic eating, but one more week of the circadian nutrition. So I don't have to spend a lot of time on it. We're already there. Circadian nutrition is based on a spectrum. We are eating to boost and take care of metabolism. Supportive nutrition is called supportive nutrition because it is supportive of metabolism. The way most people eat is antagonistic to metabolism. So when we go through the first phase of supportive circadian nutrition, we're eating frequent meals made up of lean protein, protein-sparing nutrient, and natural, ideally organic, fibrous carbohydrates. Working to provide material from which you can build new cells and optimal energy. So that's metabolic eating. At a certain point, your body starts to adjust in a very good way. And now we're going to go the next phase, which we've done. We manipulate carbohydrate intake so that we can create an internal environment where your body is willing to release fat. Why does that happen? Because we're getting you back into balance. Remember I told you everyone who comes with chronic disease has a hormonal imbalance. They can't lose fat until they're balanced. So the first phase brings them back into balance. Then we move to a phase where we start to manipulate glycogen and we start to burn fat. So most of you, especially those of you who've been here since the beginning, you went through those first two phases, and now we're in the third phase where we're focused on cleansing and detoxing as you continue to build metabolism. So it's the perfect plan. Understand that bad nutrition can be on both ends of the spectrum. You could be underfed or you could be overfed. So what is ideal is when you're eating in a manner that supports metabolism, and that's exactly what we're doing. Now, what's interesting is underfed could be undernourished and leaves you imbalanced, but understand this, overfed is also undernourished. If you're living on energy disruptors and junk food and high-calorie foods that are high-calorie because they're loaded with sugar and bad fat, you're not getting nutrition. You're just getting a lot of stuff into your body that's going to be stored and cause toxicity and cause imbalance. So on both ends of the spectrum, we need to improve nutrition to land at ideal. Circadian nutrition is ideal. So for the remaining week, stay with circadian eating. Stay with the intermittent eating. Most of you, again, I know, really enjoy it and got the hang of it. And I'll be honest, at 12:30, I'm really wanting for that green smoothie, but think of how beautiful that is, because when you start, you go, ew, the green smoothie. When I get to 12:30, 1 o'clock, and I'm going to have that green smoothie at 2, that smoothie is the greatest thing in the world. And then, oddly, I'm good until 4 o'clock. And then I have a meal, and it's a great meal. And then 3 hours later, I have another meal. And then at night, I have my golden milk. It's beautiful. This is leading to homeostasis. All of this together is leading to homeostasis. So we want to balance all of it. We want to balance your nutrition, we're balancing your exercise, we're balancing your mindset, we're balancing the chakras. And I would say if you have really followed this program along with all the coaches, while there was certainly energy required, at some level, when you look back, it seemed effortless. I say that because so many people shut themselves down with a mindset that makes everything appear to be very difficult. And when you start to implement it with coaching a little bit at a time, you start to write in your journal and you start to change your thinking. And when you change your thinking, your thoughts just start to be different, and ultimately your actions are different. You start to notice different outcomes. Am I right? Am I sharing truth? So let's understand this, and we move back into balance. All right, so as we get to the wrap-up of the program, next week, and leading up to next week, there will be some prizes and giveaways. So you'll be contacted by email or by text, and you'll be told that you won something if, in fact, you did. I can't promise everybody a prize, but, man, I got a lot of stuff to give away. The coaches have been very generous. So I will be giving away a 30-day supply of the Thrive 123, which is the capsules and the shakes and the patches. Also, we'll be giving away some of the immunity patches. If you saw Kristen's segment today, she spoke about it beautifully, which is easy to do because she's wearing them. I'm wearing one right now. Actually, watching her segment reminded me to put my immunity patch on. We'll have T-shirts, we'll have books. Some of the coaches are authors. They will sign copies of their books and give them away. We will do consults, sometimes live, sometimes by Skype. Some of the prizes will best be offered to people who live locally in a coach's vicinity because they will offer either classes or training sessions. We'll offer free training sessions, demos, lessons. We're going to be giving away some portable biohacks, some of the stuff that you've seen in Kristen's segments. I just told you a little bit about this quantum energy reading. We're going to be giving away some of those. Guided meditations and a whole lot more. So what you want to do is you want to go to the 55 Days group, and you're going to see something that looks a little bit like this or exactly like this, and you're going to click on it. And then it's going to take you to a very simple little form that you'll fill out, and then you're entered. After you enter the form, it will take you to a survey. You don't have to complete the survey, but honestly, I read every one. I pass it along to the coaches, so it does really help us understand how to best serve you. I have to just, again, take a moment. We're not ending. Again, we're back next week, and everybody's going to do their segments this week. But I really have to extend, beyond a sincere thank you, just extend my heart to every one of them because they've all done this purely for one reason, to help people. Honestly, it's what drove all of us to pursue what we do. I said this at the very beginning, but you don't meet a lot of people in life with the heart of a true altruist, where they give and give and give because they love to help people. The greatest reward of all, I know this, is when they hear thank you. Because we all share that. When somebody goes, oh, thank you. Thank you for giving me back my life. Thank you for helping me go to my reunion and feel good about it. Thank you for helping me win that competition. Thank you for giving me my dad back. We hear these, and that's the greatest reward of all. Now, granted, every one of these coaches is successful. Every one of these coaches has worked hard to achieve success. And every single one of the coaches delivers extreme value. But the fact that at this point in their careers they chose to do this for you for free is really something very, very, very special. So my thank you goes out to all of them. I know yours does too. And when you complete the survey, anything that you pass along, I will forward to them. So we're just about in a wrap. Adele, you're sending that privately to me. So if you just adjust it where it says send to, you should say all. The same is true for Scott, and the same is true for Dave. You guys are sending me private messages. So I don't know if you mean to, but you could send them to the whole group. So moving forward, we have one more week to go. You're going to choose a path and choose the routine. You don't have to change anything. You can stay with what you did last week. If you want to up your game, Holden is going to walk you through this process. Every single day of this week, you want to exercise. This is not like an every other day kind of thing. Whether you've been with us from day one or you just started last week, let's maximize what we achieve in this week. The routines are fun. The routines are certainly appropriately challenging. You want to make sure that you follow it in conjunction with the nutrition program. You want to continue to use the tool that I gave you, the manifestation tool of TAO, thoughts, actions, outcomes. You want to sleep, and you want to get plenty of water. And you want to laugh, and you want to love, and you want to listen. I asked a question today in the group. A lot of you answered me privately. A lot of you sent me clips, YouTube clips and links. But I just want to tell you that this is now comedy therapy. I took just a few of the titles. But if you're less than 30 years old and you're looking at this and you're going, I never saw that one, I never saw that one, I never saw that one, then here's your therapy. Just watch some of these movies. If you're over 50 years old and you're going, Bridesmaids, what's that? Watch it. It's a little gritty, but funny. I mean, we have the opportunity now between Netflix and Xfinity and Hulu and whatever else we have. We could just call up anything on our TV. So instead of just mindlessly watching shows that we don't care about, man, this is therapy. Why? Because laughter restores balance in neurotransmission. Here's Kristen's famous quote from Better Off Dead. My grandmother dropped acid and hijacked a bus full of penguins. So it's kind of a family crisis. If that intrigues you, you want to watch Better Off Dead. and again, those of you who are sending me private comments, it's not necessary. I appreciate it, but share things publicly with everybody here. So this is a very short list, but when I say laugh, man, I'm telling you this is therapy. And when I tell you to listen to music that you love, whether you buy Tibetan sound bowls or you download some songs that cover up frequencies, there are some frequencies that truly are healing. If you want to buy something that seems silly, but it's a really good investment, buy some tuning forks. Buy a 432 and a 528. When we tune a piano or a guitar, we tune the notes based on frequency. And today, most instruments in the United States are tuned to 440. The A is tuned to a 440 hertz frequency. And there's a difference between a 440 and a 414 and a 432. And it may not be discernible, but the frequency is different in the way that it affects you. So I would just ask you to experiment with this 432 frequency. You'll find controversy, is this true, is this not, but I would just ask you to try it. Find music or sound that resonates or vibrates at a 432. Now, I can go on with a whole lot of experiments and how when you vibrate a plate, what happens to the particles and the patterns and what it does to water. So there really is a lot of science. But I'm just asking you to subjectively find some music that is at 432 frequency and see how it makes you feel. Vanessa Mae is an incredible, incredible violin player. Now, I can't name many violin players. She is dynamic, she is beautiful, but oh my God, is she gifted. So I'm challenging you to listen to Storm by Vanessa Mae at a 432. Hans Zimmer has done many soundtracks to many of the movies that you've sat through, and you probably didn't know his songs very well because they're just the backdrop, but they affect your emotion as you're watching that movie. And he uses the 432 frequency. So if you want something else to just try and listen to, find Time by Hans Zimmer. I'll tell you one more thing that Hans Zimmer did. When my daughter was young, she loved this movie called Spirit. It's an animated movie about a horse. And I think Matt Damon is the voice. But Bryan Adams does the soundtrack. And it was written by Hans Zimmer. And I would just ask you to go on Spotify and just look for Spirit and listen to some of that music and just see how it makes you feel. I have to tell you that whatever you believe about spirit and reincarnation, John Lennon and Bob Marley have got to be something more than human. Because their music is truly eternal. I mean, when things are normal, you can go to any beach anywhere and you're singing along to Three Little Birds. No woman, no cry. You know them, and they're still today as moving as they were when Bob Marley wrote them. Imagine is in a 432. Listen to it. See how it makes you feel. Phil Collins did a song called In the Air Tonight. It really means nothing. It's really interesting how for so many years people kind of try to figure out what he meant, and they came up with all these theories. And I heard him in an interview once, and he really said, I have no idea. The words just came to me. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. But everybody's figuring it. But it's in a 432. So just try it. Just see. And if that music doesn't make you feel good, find something that does. But when I tell you these things are healing, I mean it. Where do people go to heal? To doctors? To medications? Huh? I mean, if you need to go to a doctor, yes. If you need a medicine, yes. But when we're talking about getting back into balance, you have the power. Remember, I told you it is innate. You were once a toddler, a little infant trying to figure out how to walk because it was innate that you learned to balance. And your endocrine system was in balance before it got screwed up. And your muscular system was in balance before it got screwed up, and your posture was in balance. Biomechanically, you were in balance. Biochemically, you were in balance. Let's get it back. I'm giving you every single tool. So you have the greatest coaches here. Any thoughts, comments, questions about anything? Right now, I want you to set as an outcome getting into a state of homeostasis, a true state of balance. In homeostasis, your blood sugar is balanced. In homeostasis, your blood pressure is 120/80 or a little bit lower than that. In a state of balance, when it's nighttime or time for you to wind down, you get tired and you go to sleep. When you get into the state of homeostasis, your body heals. It recovers. So if you have not been in that state of balance, then that should be a goal. But here's the beauty of it. Once you get there, now you can get better. Now you challenge yourself and you recover. And you challenge yourself and you recover. So this idea of homeostasis at a higher level becomes a moving target. You could be bigger, faster, stronger, and get back to that state of homeostasis, get back to that state of balance. Ariel says, in homeostasis, life is easy. Adele asks, is this our last meeting of the 55 days? Perfect timing, because I just landed on a slide that says, no, Adele, it is not, because next week is the final one. And for those of you who are in my Alive Across America program, we will, of course, continue on and start something new after next week. But next week will be the last webinar of the 55 Days group. I'm sorry to say all of this material will be going away. So this is a good time to review it, to download anything that you want to download. And next week, we're going to speak specifically about being in center. Now, yes, that relates to balance, but you also want to be in center of your creative tension. Meaning, you want to determine your circle of discontent, and you want to determine what your future memory is. And you want to be halfway there. You want to be in center. And as you move toward that future memory, here's the beauty of this exercise. You realize what you're capable of achieving, so your future memory expands and gets greater. So you're always halfway there, not because you're not moving, because you're setting your sights higher and higher and higher. I thoroughly enjoy hanging out with you guys. I really enjoy the dialogue, the back and forth, the posts, everybody shows. I mean, I could go coach by coach. We do that on Fridays, but just doing the week in review and looking what everybody contributes is honestly amazing. So I thank everybody for being here. This will take you to a survey. It'll take you about 30 seconds. Please take that 30 seconds and answer it. And then, if you haven't yet filled out your entry form, it'll take you there. Or you could find the entry form in the group. So until we speak again, which will be 1 week from today, be better, everybody. Bye-bye.